The first thing I noticed was the bed, not the ocean outside the balcony, not the rain sliding down the glass like melted silver, not the little basket of complimentary mints with a handwritten note that said, "Welcome, wedding guests." The bed. One queen bed, tucked neatly in the center of a room that suddenly felt about 6 inches wide. Tessa Reed walked in behind me carrying two garment bags, a makeup case, and enough calm to make me suspicious. "Well," she said, looking at the bed, "that's inconvenient." I laughed once because my body needed somewhere to put the panic. Inconvenient? That's your word? What word would you prefer? Catastrophic, biblical, potentially career-ending for my dignity. Tessa set the garment bags over the chair and gave me that sideways look she used when she was deciding whether to comfort me or ruin my life for entertainment. "Caleb," she said, "we're adults." That was true, technically. I was Caleb Brooks, 25 years old, a freelance video editor from Nashville who paid my taxes, owned one good suit, and could assemble IKEA furniture with only minor spiritual damage. But standing in a hotel room with my best friend in one bed, I did not feel like an adult. I felt like every awkward thought I had successfully buried for 2 years had just climbed out of the ground wearing a name tag. "Hi, I'm your feelings. Remember me?" Tessa and I had met at a coffee shop where she managed the bakery counter, and I edited wedding videos in the corner until my laptop overheated. She made the best lemon scones in Tennessee and had a habit of humming off key when she was focused. I once told her she sounded like a confused smoke alarm. She gave me a free scone with "traitor" written on the bag. That was how it started. 2 years later, she was my emergency contact, my favorite argument, and the person who could tell I was lying from the way I opened a bottle of water. She was also inconveniently beautiful. Not in the dramatic, slow-motion way movies insist on. Tessa was beautiful in small attacks. The smudge of flour she always missed near her wrist. The way her dark hair escaped every clip she owned. The dimple that appeared only when she was trying not to laugh. That afternoon, she wore a soft blue dress under a denim jacket, her curls pinned loosely at the back of her neck, and I had spent the entire drive pretending not to notice the shape of her shoulder when she leaned over to change the radio. We were in Charleston for her cousin Maribel's wedding. Tessa was a bridesmaid. I was her plus one because her family had started asking too many questions after her last breakup, and because, according to her, I had harmless face energy. For the record, no man wants to be told his face looks harmless by the woman he secretly thinks about at red lights. The hotel clerk had apologized 3 times. A storm had grounded half the arriving guests, 2 rooms had flooded, and the only available option was this one. One room, one bed, one best friendship balancing on a toothpick. "I can sleep on the floor," I said. Tessa looked down at the hardwood, then back at me. "You have the lower back of a retired mailman." "I'm athletic." "You made a noise tying your shoe yesterday." It was a focused breathing technique. "It was a whimper," I pointed at her. "You exaggerate when you're nervous." That landed. Her smile flickered, just for a second. "I'm not nervous," she said. "You rearranged the mints by color." She looked at the basket. She had in fact rearranged them by color. Outside, thunder rolled over the harbor. The room light blinked once, then steadied. Tessa took off her jacket and draped it over the back of a chair, moving slower now. "I really don't think it has to be weird," she said. That was the dangerous thing about Tessa. She could say something ordinary and make it feel like she'd opened a locked door. "It's not weird," I lied. She lifted an eyebrow. "It's moderately weird," I corrected, "but manageable." "Good." She unzipped her makeup case. "Because Maribel put us at the family table tonight, and if you act strange, my Aunt Rosa will smell fear and ask when we're having children." I nearly choked. "Children?" "She moves fast. We're not even fake engaged. Don't give her ideas." I sat on the edge of the bed, then immediately stood back up like it had burned me. Tessa saw. Of course she saw. Her face softened in a way that was worse than teasing. "Caleb." "Nope. I haven't said anything." "You said my name in the tone women use before they gently remove a man's internal organs?" She came closer, stopping in front of me. Close enough that I could smell vanilla, rain, and the faint floral shampoo she used. Close enough that the air changed. We've slept in the same apartment before, she said, on separate furniture. You fell asleep on my couch during that documentary about mushrooms. That documentary was emotionally demanding. You drooled on my throw pillow. I trusted you with that information. Her smile returned, but it didn't hide the nerves in her eyes this time. Tessa was brave in public and careful in private. After her ex, Julian, had made every conversation feel like a performance review, she'd stopped asking for much. She joked instead. She deflected. She made herself easy to be around so nobody noticed when she was lonely. I noticed. That was the problem. Because somewhere between coffee refills and late-night grocery runs, I had stopped being harmless. At least on the inside. And I had no idea if she knew. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from my older sister, Brooke. Don't do anything stupid at the wedding. Then another. Actually knowing you, do something stupid. You've been in love with her long enough. I lunged for the phone, but Tessa was faster. She didn't grab it. She just glanced down. Her eyes moved across the screen. The room went silent. Every raindrop on the balcony sounded louder. Tessa, I said carefully. She looked at me, and for once she didn't have a joke ready. You're in love with me? She asked. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. That was when someone knocked hard on the door. Tessa? A woman called from the hallway. Hair and makeup in 20 minutes. And your aunt wants to know if Caleb is the serious one or just the handsome friend. Tessa didn't look away from me. The corner of her mouth trembled like she was fighting a smile or fear or both. Handsome friend, she whispered. Tessa. She stepped closer, so close her dress brushed my knee. Then she took my hand. Not dramatically, not like a movie. More like she had decided something and was terrified she might change her mind if she waited. Her fingers were warm around mine. Sharing a bed is no big deal, she said, but her voice had gone softer. Then she placed my hand on her waist, and I forgot every safe thing I had ever planned to say. There are moments in a man's life when he becomes painfully aware of his own hand. Mine was on Tessa's waist, not hovering, not accidentally brushing. On her waist, where the blue fabric of her dress curved under my palm and her breath caught like she'd been surprised by her own courage. The knock came again. Tessa, the woman in the hall called. 20 minutes. Okay, Tessa called back, still looking at me. Her voice sounded normal. Her pulse under my thumb did not. I swallowed. You read the text. I did. My sister is dramatic. Is she wrong? That question hit harder than it should have, probably because Tessa was still holding my wrist like she wanted my hand exactly where it was. Like if I tried to pull away, she might stop me. I should have lied. Made a joke. Saved the friendship by tossing myself on the nearest emotional grenade. Instead, I said, no. Tessa's eyes widened. My hand tightened, barely at her waist. She's not wrong. The hallway went quiet. Somewhere nearby, a door shut. Rain whispered against the balcony glass. Inside the room, everything seemed to wait. Tessa released my wrist, but she didn't move away. How long? She asked. I let out a breath, half laugh, half surrender. Do you want the version where I pretend it's recent and dignified? No. Then, I don't know exactly. It wasn't one big lightning strike. I glanced down at my hand on her waist because apparently I had no survival instinct. It was more like realizing every room got better when you walked into it. And every good thing that happened to me felt unfinished until I told you. Her lips parted. I immediately wanted to walk into the ocean. That was too much, I said. I had a whole plan to never say any of that. What was the plan? Die, quietly, of emotional constipation. A laugh escaped her, soft and shaky. Sounds healthy. I was committed. She looked down and her fingers found the cuff of my shirt. She pinched the fabric lightly, rubbing it between thumb and forefinger, the way she did with napkins when she was thinking. I didn't know, she said. That hurt more gently than I expected. I know. No, I mean, she looked up. I didn't let myself know. I went still. Tessa's humor faded, leaving something bare underneath. After Julian, I kept telling myself safe was the only thing I wanted. Safe friends, safe plans, safe rooms where nobody wanted anything from me. I don't want to be another person wanting something from you. I know. Her voice warmed on the words. That's the thing. You never made me feel cornered. You just stayed. You noticed when I was tired. You learned my coffee order and pretended it wasn't a big deal. You sat with me on my kitchen floor when I cried over a broken mixer like it was a dead pet. That mixer had personality. And it smoked. It was passionate. She smiled, but her eyes shone. Then she stepped into me. Not all the way. Just enough that my palm slid a fraction around her waist and the front of her dress brushed my suit jacket. It was the smallest distance in the world, and crossing it felt enormous. I'm scared, she admitted. The confession undid me. I lifted my other hand slowly, giving her every chance to back away, and brushed a loose curl from her cheek. Of me? No. Her gaze flicked to my mouth, then back. Of losing you. I had imagined kissing Tessa more times than was respectable. In kitchens, in parking lots. Once, embarrassingly, while she was explaining how yeast worked, and I realized I had not heard a word for 4 minutes. But I hadn't imagined this. Her reaching for me first and looking at me like the wanting was not just mine. You won't, I said. You can't promise that. No. My thumb moved once at her waist. But I can promise I'm not looking for a quick version of you. Her breath trembled. Another knock came, sharper this time. Tess? If you're not downstairs in 15, Maribel is going to start stress-eating Jordan almonds. Tessa closed her eyes. My family has no respect for emotional turning points. Honestly rude. She laughed, and the sound steadied us both. Then, to my complete devastation, she stepped back. My hand fell from her waist. The absence of her was loud. We have to go, she said. Yes, wedding, family table, handsome friend. Her smile turned wicked. Serious one, maybe. My brain stopped functioning for the second time in 5 minutes. Maybe? She moved to the mirror and picked up her lipstick. Don't look so pleased. I said maybe. I'm not pleased. This is my neutral face. You look like a golden retriever who just heard the word park. I have layers. You have exactly one layer, and it's loyal. I leaned against the dresser, trying to pretend I wasn't memorizing the line of her neck as she tilted her chin toward the mirror. That sounded dangerously like a compliment. It was. She applied lipstick with the kind of concentration that should not have been attractive, and absolutely was. Don't make it weird. It's only weird if I write it down. Please don't. I might start a list. Tessa Reed called me handsome adjacent and loyal. I did not say adjacent. So just handsome? She capped the lipstick and looked at me through the mirror. The air shifted again. Yes, she said softly. Just handsome. I had no defense against that. By the time we got downstairs, the wedding weekend had fully swallowed the hotel lobby. Cousins in silk dresses, uncles with damp hair, children sliding across polished floors while adults pretended not to see. White roses stood in tall glass vases, and beyond the windows, the storm blurred, Charleston into watercolor. Tessa's Aunt Rosa found us within 30 seconds. She was 5 feet tall, wore red lipstick like armor, and had the assessing gaze of a loan officer. Caleb, she said, kissing both my cheeks before I could prepare. You are still here. I am. With Tessa. That is also true? Her eyes narrowed happily. Good. Tessa slipped her arm through mine. A simple move. A public one. My heart reacted like she'd proposed. Aunt Rosa noticed because of course she did. She said. Tessa's grip tightened. Don't, I didn't say anything. You said it with your eyebrows. My eyebrows are wise. Then she swept away toward a cluster of relatives, leaving us alone beside a table of champagne flutes. Tessa didn't release my arm. I glanced down. For appearances. She looked up at me. Partly. And the other part? She took a champagne flute from the table and handed it to me. Her fingers brushed mine, deliberate this time. The other part is, I like being next to you. It wasn't a kiss. It wasn't a declaration. But it was a step. and when the string quartet began warming up in the ballroom. Tessa leaned her head briefly against my shoulder like she was testing how it felt to be seen choosing me. I stood perfectly still. Then, carefully, I turned and kissed the top of her hair. She didn't move away. She only whispered, "Don't get smug." Too late. The ceremony rehearsal lasted 45 minutes, which was impressive considering it contained only 6 bridesmaids, 1 aisle, and a groom who kept forgetting which side was his. Tessa stood 3 places ahead of me in the lineup, bouquet substitute in hand, pretending to listen while Maribel's wedding planner explained a graceful walking pace for the 4th time. Every few seconds, Tessa glanced back. Every time she caught me watching, she made a face. The first was subtle, a tiny eye roll. The second was a silent plea for rescue. The third involved her pretending to faint into another bridesmaid's arms. I had never been more in love in my life. After rehearsal, dinner moved to a private room off the hotel restaurant. All candlelight and rain-dark windows and relatives who treated seating charts like military strategy. Somehow, I ended up beside Tessa. "Did you bribe someone?" I whispered as we sat. "No." "Tessa." I complimented the planner's earrings and mentioned you get anxious if seated too far from me. I stared at her. "You weaponized my devotion." She unfolded her napkin with perfect innocence. "Efficiently." Under the table, her knee brushed mine. It could have been accidental. Then it happened again. Not accidental. My entire body became aware of one point of contact, her bare knee against the fabric of my pants. I took a drink of water like a man trying to survive a desert. Across the table, Aunt Rosa watched us over her wineglass. "So," she said, smiling like a cat near an open pantry. "How long have you two been together?" Tessa coughed. I looked at her, giving her the choice. Fake answer, real answer, joke answer, anything she wanted. She surprised me by reaching under the table and taking my hand. Her fingers slid between mine. "Officially?" she asked. Aunt Rosa leaned forward. Maribel, the bride, leaned forward. 3 cousins leaned forward. I stopped breathing. Tessa's thumb moved once across my knuckles. "We're still figuring that part out." The table erupted, not loudly exactly, but with the particular delighted chaos of relatives who smelled romance and had been waiting years to pounce. "I knew it," Aunt Rosa said. "You did not," Tessa argued. "I am wise." "You are nosy." "Same gift, different packaging." Maribel clasped her hands under her chin. "Oh my gosh, this is adorable." "It's not adorable," Tessa said, though she was blushing. "It's a little adorable," I said. She turned to me. "Traitor. You gave me your hand. I became compromised." Her blush deepened, and I wanted to keep that color on her face forever. Dinner passed in waves of laughter, toasts, clinking glasses, and Tessa leaning toward me whenever someone said something funny. Each time she did, her shoulder pressed against my arm. Each time she stayed a second longer than necessary. At dessert, the servers brought out tiny key lime tarts. Tessa took one bite of hers and closed her eyes. "Oh," she said, "that sound should have been illegal in public." I looked down at my untouched tart. "Do you want mine?" Her eyes opened. "I'm not taking your dessert." You stared at it with intent. I did not. You looked like a pirate spotting a merchant ship. I simply appreciated its structure. I pushed my plate toward her. She tried to resist for approximately 2 seconds before stealing a bite. "You're too easy." "Only with you." The words came out low, honest. Her fork paused. Around us, the room carried on, but Tessa's attention narrowed to me. Candlelight caught in her eyes. Her mouth softened, a little green lime filling at the corner. Without thinking, I reached up and brushed it away with my thumb. Her breath stopped. So did mine. My hand lingered near her face for half a heartbeat too long. Then she turned her cheek into my palm, just barely, like a secret she didn't want anyone else to see. It was the kind of touch people write songs about badly. Then Maribel called for everyone to gather in the ballroom for one practice dance, and the moment broke. Tessa stood quickly, smoothing her dress. We should go. Are we practicing? You're my plus one. That sounds dangerously close to partner. She held out her hand. Don't panic, Brooks. I'm not panicking. You're looking at my hand like it's a tax audit. It's a very intimidating hand. She wiggled her fingers. Come on. So I took it. The ballroom had been mostly set for tomorrow, round tables dressed in white, garlands of greenery, fairy lights strung along the ceiling. The storm outside turned the windows black, making the room feel suspended from the rest of the world. The quartet had gone home, so someone played an old playlist through a speaker. A slow song drifted out, warm and scratchy. Couples moved onto the floor in laughing clusters. Tessa faced me and lifted both brows. You can dance, right? I can sway with emotional sincerity. That'll do. She stepped close and placed one hand on my shoulder. I set mine at her waist, more confident this time, though my pulse made no promises. Her other hand fit into mine. We moved badly at first. She stepped on my shoe. I overcorrected and nearly spun us into Uncle Victor. Tessa laughed into my chest and I felt it more than hurt it. Graceful walking pace, I reminded her. You lead like a shopping cart with one bad wheel. I am creating spontaneity. You are creating a lawsuit. But after a minute, we found a rhythm. Not perfect. Ours. Her hand relaxed in mine. Her body settled closer. Her cheek hovered near my shoulder, and the scent of vanilla and rain wrapped around me again. I liked what you said, she murmured. What did I say? I've been charming all evening. You'll have to narrow it down. She pinched my shoulder. Ow! That you're only easy with me. I grew quiet. She tilted her face up. Did you mean it? Yes. The song moved around us. People laughed nearby. Someone called for more wine. None of it reached the place where we were standing. I don't know how to do this without being scared, she said. Then be scared with me. Her eyes searched mine. I had the strangest feeling she was waiting for me to take something, and the even stronger feeling that I didn't want to take anything she wasn't offering. So I asked, Can I kiss you? Tessa's fingers tightened on mine. For one terrible second, she said nothing. Then she whispered, I was hoping you would. I bent slowly, giving her time. She met me halfway. Our first kiss was soft enough to break me. No fireworks, no dramatic music swelling louder. Just Tessa's mouth warm against mine, her hand sliding from my shoulder to the back of my neck, as if she'd wanted to touch me there for longer than she'd admitted. I kissed her carefully at first. Then she made a small, impatient sound and rose on her toes, deepening it. That sound went straight through me. When we parted, her eyes were still closed. I rested my forehead against hers. Hi. She laughed under her breath. That's what you're going with. I used all my best material not passing out. Her thumb brushed the back of my neck. For the record, that was not harmless face energy. No. No. She opened her eyes. That was serious one energy. I smiled so hard it hurt. From across the ballroom, Aunt Rosa shouted, I saw that! Tessa buried her face against my chest. I'm eloping from my own cousin's wedding. I wrapped my arms around her, laughing, and kissed her hair. Too late, I said. Your eyebrows gave us away. She tipped her head back, eyes bright, cheeks flushed, mouth kissed. Caleb? Yeah? Tonight. She hesitated, but she didn't look away. Don't sleep on the floor. My heart kicked. I kept my voice gentle. Only if you're sure. I'm sure about sharing a bed. Her fingers traced the lapel of my jacket. I'm still figuring out everything else. That's enough. She smiled smaller now, realer. Then she took my hand and led me back into the music. By the time we escaped upstairs, the hotel had settled into that late-night hush that makes every small sound feel deliberate. The elevator hummed. Tessa stood beside me close enough that our sleeves touched. Neither of us said anything, which, for us, was suspicious. Finally, I cleared my throat. So, weather. She looked at me. I panicked, I admitted. Her mouth twitched. You kissed me in a ballroom in front of my entire family, but elevators are where you lose courage? Your Aunt Rosa has already seen my soul. This is different. How? There's a bed upstairs. The elevator dinged. Tessa's cheeks flushed, but she didn't look away. There is. We walked to the room in silence that was not empty. It was crowded with everything we weren't saying. Inside, the bed waited exactly where we'd left it. Smug and enormous, and not nearly large enough. Tessa kicked off her heels with a sigh. I have blisters. I warned you about shoes designed by a person who hates feet. They're beautiful. They're tiny torture chambers with straps. She sat on the edge of the bed and lifted one foot, wincing as she rubbed her heel. I grabbed the little hotel first aid kit from the bathroom and knelt in front of her. Her brows lifted. Caleb, what? You don't have to perform emergency boyfriend duties. The word boyfriend hit the room like a thrown match. We both froze. Tessa's eyes widened. I'm not objecting. You should object a little for realism. I'm historically bad at realism where you're concerned. She looked down at me, her expression softening. I took out a bandage and held it up. May I? She nodded. I rested her foot gently on my knee and placed the bandage over the small, angry mark near her heel. It was ridiculous how intimate it felt. Her skin warm in my hand, her dress brushing my wrist, her watching me like I was doing something more important than covering a blister. When I finished, I didn't let go right away. Tess, I said quietly, about the boyfriend thing. She swallowed. I don't need a title tonight. I don't need you to leap across some imaginary finish line because we kissed and your aunt started planning centerpieces. A weak laugh escaped her, but I do need you to know something. I looked up at her. If you ever want that word with me, I want it too. Her lips parted. For a second, she looked younger somehow, not childish, just unguarded. I thought wanting someone meant losing ground, she said. I stayed still. With Julian, everything I gave became something he could use. My time, my feelings, even my favorite songs. She glanced away, embarrassed by the confession. After him, I promised myself nobody would get that much access again. I hate that he made you feel like loving someone was a liability. Her eyes shone. I set her foot carefully down and sat beside her on the bed, leaving space between us even though my whole body objected. Tessa looked at that space. Then she crossed it. She leaned her shoulder into mine first, then her head. Then slowly she slid her hand into mine. I don't feel like I'm losing ground with you, she whispered. I feel like I'm finding somewhere to stand. That did it. I turned toward her and she lifted her face like she already knew the shape of my answer. The kiss was different from the ballroom. Slower, quieter, a little uncertain at the edges. Her hand came to my jaw, thumb brushing over the place I'd nicked shaving that morning. Mine settled at her waist, and when she sighed against my mouth, the sound went through me so sharply I had to pull back. Not far. Just enough to breathe. She smiled faintly. You okay? No, I'm being extremely noble and it's killing me. A laugh burst out of her, bright and relieved. Poor Caleb. I suffer beautifully. You do have tragic eyebrows. I've been told they're expressive. She touched one with her fingertip. They're currently saying, I would like to kiss you again, but I'm trying to be respectful. My eyebrows are very articulate. Then tell them I'm going to change into pajamas. My eyebrows support this plan. She stood, still smiling, and disappeared into the bathroom with her overnight bag. I changed faster than any man had ever changed, then sat on the far edge of the bed in sweatpants and a t-shirt, staring at the wall like it contained instructions for survival. The bathroom door opened. Tessa came out wearing an oversized cream sleep shirt and plaid shorts, hair loose around her shoulders. I forgot the wall existed. She pointed at me. Don't look at me like that. Like what? Like I'm dessert you're trying not to order. I gave you my key lime tart earlier. This is precedent. She laughed, but the blush returned. We climbed into bed like two people defusing a bomb. There were rules. Unspoken but obvious. Space. Care. No pretending this was casual when neither of us felt casual at all. For 3 full minutes, we lay on our backs, separated by an invisible line down the center of the mattress. Rain tapped the balcony glass. Tessa sighed. This is absurd. Agreed. We've cuddled before. Under emergency circumstances, you were sad and I was wearing a hoodie. You're wearing a t-shirt now. Scandalous. I'm practically a temptress. She turned onto her side, facing me. In the dim light, her eyes looked almost black. Caleb? Yeah? Can you hold me? Every joking part of me went silent. I turned toward her and opened my arm. She moved in carefully, then all at once, tucking herself against my chest like she belonged there and was afraid to believe it. My hand found her waist. Her fingers curled in my shirt. For a long time, we just breathed. This is not no big deal, she murmured. No. I lied earlier. I know. She tipped her face up. Did you? About what? When you said it wasn't weird. I smiled. Massive lie. She kissed the underside of my jaw so softly I almost missed it. Almost. Tessa, I breathed. She settled closer, her cheek against my chest. Just that. For now. I kissed her hair. Anything you want. In the morning, I woke to sunlight after the storm and Tessa's leg thrown over mine. My arm was numb. I would have let it die there. She stirred, blinked up at me, and smiled sleepily before remembering everything. Then her smile deepened. Morning, serious one, she whispered. I brushed hair from her face. Morning, maybe, girlfriend. She groaned and hit against my chest. You're impossible. You started it. I placed one hand on my waist and your entire life fell apart. Accurate. She laughed, then lifted her head and kissed me. Morning kisses should come with warnings. This one was warm and soft and full of all the things we hadn't named yet. When she pulled back, her expression turned thoughtful. What? I asked. My cousin gets married today. I heard rumors. And after that, we go home. The words settled between us. Home meant her bakery counter, my laptop corner, our routines waiting like nothing had changed, except everything had. I traced my thumb along her knuckles. Then we go home different. She searched my face. You make that sound easy. No, I make it sound worth it. Tessa looked at me for a long moment, then she smiled, nervous and brave. Okay, she said. Different. The wedding day arrived bright and rinsed clean, as if Charleston had spent all night crying dramatically and woke up pretending nothing happened. Tessa stood by the balcony in her bridesmaid dress, sunlight catching in her loose curls. I was supposed to be tying my tie. I was staring. She caught me in the mirror. You're doing it again. Doing what? Looking at me like that. I'm documenting. With your eyes? I'm a professional. She turned, walking over to fix my tie because I had, admittedly, created a knot that looked like a decorative pretzel. Her fingers worked at my collar. Mine found her waist automatically. She paused, smile tucked at the corner of her mouth. Careful, that's how this whole thing started. I remember, best night of my life. Terrible for my blood pressure. She smoothed the tie flat against my chest, but her hand stayed there. Caleb. Yeah? If I panic today, don't let me make a joke and run. I covered her hand with mine. Okay. And if I get quiet, don't assume it means I regret anything. That landed deep. I bent and kissed her once, soft and slow. I won't. Her lashes fluttered. You're getting dangerously good at that. I've had one night of training and a very inspiring teacher. She laughed, then rested her forehead against mine. For a minute, we just stood there in the sunlit room with the ruined tie on my neck and my hand at the place on her waist that had changed everything. The ceremony was beautiful. Maribel cried before she reached the aisle. Her groom cried harder. Aunt Rosa handed tissues to strangers like a general distributing supplies. Tessa stood in pale blue with flowers in her hands, and every time she glanced at me from the front row, my heart did something embarrassing and visible. At the reception, she found me during cocktail hour, slipped her hand into mine and said, "Come with me." Are we fleeing? Temporarily. She led me through a side door to a quiet garden courtyard tucked behind the hotel. The storm had left everything shining, brick paths, glossy leaves, white flowers heavy with rain. Music drifted faintly through the walls. Tessa stopped beneath a magnolia tree and turned to face me. "I need to say something before my family interrupts with cake opinions," she said. I tried to smile. "Sounds serious." "It is." My chest tightened. She looked down at our joined hands. I spent a long time thinking love was supposed to feel like proving myself. Like if I was useful enough or agreeable enough, someone would stay kind. "Tess." She shook her head, not to stop me, but to keep herself steady. "Then there was you. And you made friendship feel like rest. I didn't know what to do when it started feeling like more." I stepped closer. Her eyes lifted to mine. "I'm still scared, but I don't want safe if safe means pretending I don't want you." I forgot how to breathe. "So," she said, voice trembling and brave. "Officially, if you still want that word." I smiled before she finished. "I do." "Boyfriend?" Enthusiastically. She laughed, wiping at one tear before it fell. "That's not a normal answer." "I'm not normal about you." Then she kissed me. Not careful this time. Not testing. She kissed me like choosing me was not a cliff but a door, and she had finally decided to walk through it. I held her beneath the magnolia tree while distant applause rose from inside for someone else's love story, and I thought, selfishly, that the best part of the wedding had happened out here. Later we danced again. Better this time, though she still accused me of shopping cart tendencies. Aunt Rosa cornered us near the cake table, took one look at our hands linked together, and said, "Finally." Tessa sighed. "We became official 2 hours ago." I said, "Finally." Maribel hugged us both so hard I lost vision in one eye, and my sister Brooke texted me, "Did you do something stupid?" I sent back a photo of Tessa kissing my cheek. Brooke replied, "Best stupid thing you've ever done." When we drove home the next day, Tessa fell asleep in the passenger seat somewhere outside Columbia, her hand resting open on the console between us. I took it carefully. She didn't wake. Her fingers simply curled around mine. Back in Nashville, we did go home different. Not loudly at first. There were no dramatic announcements, no sudden merging of lives overnight. We still met at the coffee shop where she worked, and I edited videos in the corner. Except now she kissed me before handing over my coffee, and I forgot basic language every time. We went on our first official date the Friday after the wedding. Dinner at a tiny Thai place, then a walk through a bookstore where she bought a romance novel and dared me not to blush at the cover. I failed. She framed the hotel key card from Charleston and hung it in her kitchen with a sticky note underneath that said, "No big deal." 3 months later, I had a drawer at her apartment. 6 months later, she left a toothbrush at mine and pretended it was an accident. By the following spring, we took another trip to Charleston. Same hotel, different room, still one bed. This time, when we walked in, Tessa dropped her bag, looked at the bed, and grinned. "Well," she said, "that's convenient." I pulled her into my arms. Catastrophic. Biblical. Potentially career-ending for my dignity. She slid her hands up my chest, eyes bright with that same terrifying courage from the first night. "Caleb." "Yeah?" She took my hand and placed it on her waist. And this time, I didn't freeze. I kissed her like she was home, like friendship had become fire and fire had become warmth. Like every ordinary day after that first impossible night was waiting for us with coffee, bad dancing, shared dessert, and one bed we no longer had to pretend was no big deal. So what would you have done if your best friend said sharing a bed was no big deal, then took your hand and placed it on her waist? Have you ever experienced something similar with someone you were afraid to lose? Tell your story in the comments. And for those who'd like to be a little closer to us, we've opened memberships where you'll get shorter, exclusive stories every week with no ads. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.